Hello YouTube, this is the Hobbyist, and in today's video I would like to do a drawing review of Marvel's Netflix series Luke Cage. In this day and age, we're seeing a huge influx of superhero genre TV series. For example, on the CW network we have The Flash, Arrow, Supergirl, and Legends of Tomorrow. On Marvel's side, or on Netflix, we have the 3 installments of The Defenders, including 2 seasons of Daredevil, 1 season of Jessica Jones, and now Luke Cage. The studios are definitely trying to spice things up by adding new elements and new flavors into each and every of their projects. For example, in the case of Jessica Jones, aside from an awesome superhero-related storyline, we're also getting this philosophical dialogue on the issue of how does an abusive relationship affects the female partner. For example, if we think of the central villain Kilgrave as a very persuasive, very abusive male partner, then throughout the series the audience gets to explore how such a detrimental relationship affects the female partner. And in the case of Luke Cage, the most impressive thing, the thing that struck me the most, was how much pride and respect this series exerts on the issue of black culture. In this day and age, we can all agree that there's no lack of presence of black actors or black actresses in the TV industry. In fact, it's almost becoming formulaic that the central protagonist of a prominent TV series has to be white, and his either love interest or best friend or even sidekick has to be a black person. However, when it comes to the question of does this black person accurately present his own culture, this question is very debatable. Sure, this character may play basketball, he may even listen to hip-hop music. However, that's about the extent to which he or she represents his own culture. And to be honest, in modern television, the closest thing to what The Sopranos had done to the Italian culture is perhaps HBO's The Wire. However, the problem with The Wire is that its subject matter almost hits too close to home. And what I mean by that is that the various systematic problems being portrayed in different seasons is not fictional, it's very real, and because of this brutal reality, it may affect its acceptance among the general public. For example, the problem with the educational system being portrayed in the 4th season made me feel extremely depressed when I saw that all these innocent young kids do not get to have a future just because they were born in this terrible environment. Therefore, I agree wholeheartedly with some of the statements when people say that they see Luke Cage being the first Black Lives Matter hero. And these people, when they say that, they might meant their statement in a tongue-in-cheek kind of way, a very sarcastic way. However, I mean to say that Luke Cage is the first Black Lives Matter hero in the nicest way, because we all know that the Black Lives Matter movement is catching some criticisms, some negative connotations. However, in the case of Luke Cage, the TV series offers you reasons why do Black Lives Matter, why you may take an interest in the black culture. And how they do this is that they painstakingly craft the dialogues between the characters in such a way to educate the audience on the various black artists, black musicians, and heroes. For example, there was one very powerful scene when Luke Cage, the central protagonist, was being robbed at gunpoint by a delinquent youth on the Malcolm X Boulevard. And Luke Cage just turns around and says to the youth, and of course I'm paraphrasing here, he says something to the effect of, "I can't believe we're standing in front of this building that is dedicated to our greatest hero, and you call me the N-word." And the pain and disbelief in his eyes says everything. So the way I interpreted this was that whereas other Black Lives Matter movements caught criticism because they kept emphasizing on what external forces did to them, for example, police brutality or income inequality or other social issues, the message that is embedded in Luke Cage the series is that you have to value black culture, you have to respect black people, not because of the external forces, not because of what other people did to us, but what we have contributed to the American culture. And this, like I have mentioned before, is reflected in the name-dropping fashion of how the characters argued about who is the best black basketball athlete, introducing the audience to some of the most prominent black writers, black intellectuals. And in a way, all the musicians that have performed in Cottonmouth's nightclub is in a way the director, the TV series is trying to educate or introduce the audience to the culture of black music. And now let's talk about some of the characters, some of the cast in this TV series. The first one we're going to talk about is the central protagonist, Luke Cage. And the way I perceive this character is that he is almost like an amalgamation of all the black heroes put together. And what I mean by this is that he is as charismatic as Martin Luther King, and he is also eloquent and articulate when addressing a large crowd, just like Malcolm X. And Luke Cage also possesses the physicality and the power of Muhammad Ali. But this character also at the same time is devoid of any flaws, any physical or moral flaws. So in a way, Luke Cage is inspiring and unrelatable in the same breath. So I'll just leave it as is. And the next character I would like to talk about is Cottonmouth. In my opinion, this is a great villain. And it's interesting that when you compare Luke Cage to the season 1 of Daredevil, the backstory of Cottonmouth is almost analogous to the backstory of Kingpin or Wilson Fisk, in the sense that they both started out as innocent or even sweet kids. However, they were coerced or forced into becoming the monsters we see they are when they confronted the central heroes of the shows. So in the case of Cottonmouth, it is very tragic to see that this kid who is so musically talented to become this underworld drug lord. Speaking of musically talented, some of the keyboard pieces performed by Cottonmouth in this series is extremely beautiful, and I implore anyone who is seeing this video and who is also musically literate to tell me what is the genre of the music so I can get a hold of the album. And as a continuation of our previous comparison between Wilson Fisk and Cottonmouth, I would like to say that Cottonmouth is a far more superior villain comparing to the second villain of the show, who is Diamondback. And I say this because the whole dynamics between Diamondback and Luke Cage is very analogous to what we have seen in the dynamics in the first Thor movie, in the sense of Loki being adopted from the Frost Giant and Odin not loving him enough being the sole motivation of Loki doing all these fucked up shit. So when this Diamondback guy pops up and when he is motivated by the exact same shenanigan, as an audience it's very hard to take him seriously. And on top of that, from my personal observation, it's almost becoming a cliche that whenever a Marvel Netflix series has two villains, the second one inevitably sucks. When we think of the first season of Daredevil, we only have one villain, Wilson Fisk, and he was awesome. And in the second season, we have Frank Castle, aka the Punisher, and Elektra. And the first half was awesome. I really loved all the parts that contains Frank Castle. And when Elektra pops up, it sucks. And same deal with Jessica Jones. We only have one villain, Killgrave. I would like to say that because of that, the pace is excellent. There's no dragging. When it comes to Luke Cage, where we have two villains, Cottonmouth and Diamondback, the first one is awesome and the second one sucks. Alright guys, that's essentially my review on the Netflix series Luke Cage. It boils down to that I enjoy this show because of how seriously they take pride and respect the black culture. At the same time, I think that the show suffered a little because of the weak second villain, aka Diamondback. And speaking of the minority culture, I really appreciate how accurately they represent and promote other minority cultures. For example, there's this one scene where Luke Cage was being trained by an inmate for this underground prison fight, and these two characters were going back and forth debating who is a better martial artist. Is it Bruce Lee or Jet Li? And this to me is very respectful towards the Asian culture. I really hope that with the success of Luke Cage, in the future whenever they tackle the issue of other minority cultures, they could get it right. Alright guys, so that's all I have to say in this video. I hope you found it to be entertaining, and I also hope that you like the original artwork. With that said, please like and share the video and subscribe to the channel, and I will see all of you in the next video. Bye bye.